Lovely, you can sit. It is warm this evening. I think these are my ones. I'll grab all of these together. Okay. I need those ones. I think I've got my spiel. I think so. Right. Hello, everyone. It's extremely warm in here. It's not just me, is it? Hi, I'm Tor, and I'm the Mayor of Worcester. And welcome to the meeting tonight, everyone, including all our lovely public participants at the back. This is a public meeting, and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photographing, making an audio recording, and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note that this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded, and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is on the High Street opposite the Guildhall. And I'm going to remind members that you're sharing a microphone, so if you are coming to speak, make sure you put your cards over the left-hand side of the speaker so that we know who it is that is speaking. And when there are votes tonight, please can you make sure that you raise your yellow card, as this will help with counting the votes. Right. So, City Orator. Right, I have selected a new orator since the last meeting. Our new orator is a chap called Paul Robert. Unfortunately, Paul Robert can't be here tonight, but he has shared a poem that I'm going to read, and I'm not an expert on reading poetry. I really wish he was here because I'm sure he'd do a much better job of it. But it's called Shared Treasure, and it goes like this. Life is short, it needs to breathe, unfettered from the plaits we weave, binding us to expectations, concrete forces, social norms. We riddle messages, bury risk, cover who and what we value, save knowledge for partisan advantage, hold it, sleeve it safe as arms. We could let our minds entangle, saturate with oxygen and inspection, softening like rigid rods of pasta, bubbling in waters of collaboration, because shared treasure seasons our experience and collective light enhances life. And I hope he doesn't read that back because I imagine I read it with the wrong rhythm entirely. Fabulous. So we'll move on to apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies this evening?
Yes, Mayor. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Alcott, Councillor Round and Councillor Smith.
Thank you. We'll now go to declarations of interest. Any interest to declare?
With regards to item 8, I'm a member of Warndon Villages Parish Council.
Thank you. Are there any further interests to declare? Yes, Councillor Rudge.
Sorry. Yes. I'm on the Warndon Villages Parish Council, is what I meant to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Rudge. Councillor Lawrenson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to declare an interest given my role as Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee, and I'm implicated in item 9, Special Responsibility Allowance. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrenson. Councillor De Serra.
I'm the Vice Chair of that same committee.
Thank you. Are there any further interests?
With your permission, Mayor, if I could just provide a bit of advice about declaration of interest tonight. So, for the record, there is a special dispensation in place for members to vote on allowances. So, therefore, members who are eligible to receive an allowance are eligible to vote on it. In relation to the community governance review agenda item, I think it's helpful that those councillors who are also parish councillors have declared an interest. That is only an other disclosable interest. It is not a pecuniary interest. And then I just also would like to reiterate the advice that I've given at meetings of the Audit and Governance Committee about the legal process that we're following in relation to the Community Governance Review. It is a staged process, two-stage process, and it requires ultimately a decision from the full council as to whether there should be changes to local level community governance, for example, changes to town or parish council arrangements. Therefore, the Chamber have been previously advised that it's important that councillors approach the issues with an open mind. They may appear positively predisposed towards an outcome, but they may not appear predetermined. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If we don't have any further interest, I will move on to the minutes from the last two meetings. So those are the annual general meeting that was held on the 12th of May 2026 and the extraordinary meeting which was held on the 29th of June. Are we happy to agree that that's a true and accurate record? Okay, I will move on to the Mayor's communications. So these are things that I have been doing since the last meeting or plan to do in the future, which is quite a lot of things. So since the last meeting, I would like to thank everyone who has invited me to their events and celebrations. My theme for the year is community, and it's been so fantastic to be able to celebrate the power of people coming together. I feel extremely lucky to share my time as mayor with so many wonderful people in Worcester. I've got to see so many different parts of Worcester that I would have never been to see before. So I'm really, really glad to be able to do this. And I've done so much since May, but here are a couple of things that I have written down. So firstly, the civic service. Thank you to everyone who attended the civic service. We've had a civic service in Worcester since 1621, and it's always a special occasion. It was made even more memorable this year because I got to give one of the readings, which felt quite surreal, but I really enjoyed it. And I particularly enjoyed the sermon from Dean Stephen. He is fantastic, and I'd like to just give a thanks to him and all of the cathedral team for organising the event. On one of the hottest days of the year, which feels like it should be today, but it actually wasn't, it was slightly earlier, I helped raise the Armed Forces flag for Armed Forces Week, and it's incredibly important that we recognise and thank the men and women who serve in our armed forces or have served in our armed forces. Same week was also Windrush. We also had Windrush Day, and it's also important, it was lovely to be able to recognise the Afro-Caribbeans who began arriving in the UK in 1948 and helped rebuild our country after World War II. I've also been over to France, and I went to the Fête de la Marguerite, which is a major celebration in one of our twin towns, Les Visnay. It was fantastic, and I'm really grateful to Worcester Twinning Association for organising the visit, and to the host family who let me stay in their house for a few days. It was fantastic. And I've attended so many other community events, and I visited schools, and I visited charities, and I visited organisations, but if I listed them all off now, we would be here a very long time, and I appreciate it's very warm this evening, but I'd like to just give a thank you to absolutely everyone who has invited me to their event, and if you would like to read more about it, I'm really enjoying writing the Mayor's blog, and the Mayor's blog is available on the website, so please do have a little look at that. I've already mentioned that we have a new orator. Our new orator is called Paul Roberts. He's a really fantastic chap. Unfortunately, he can't be here this evening. On your tables, you will also see a new poster. I'm hoping they put it out, which is about our shift scheme. I'm hoping it's there. So with our shift scheme, if you've cycled to the city council meetings, for every kilometre that you've cycled, we will donate some money to my charity. My charity this year is Onside. I hope you're fiddling around, but I'm sure it's on there somewhere. So if you have cycled here, please make sure that you are logging your mileage. I think Hannah's also indicating that if you've walked here, you can also log that as well. In terms of upcoming events, we've got the Three Choirs Festival in Gloucester later this month, which I'm really looking forward to. I am holding an event here at the Guildhall on the 4th of September, so that's Friday the 4th of September, which is something a bit new. I've called it Inaugural Sessions, which might be a bit too young and hip, I'm not sure, but it's essentially an evening of music. It's going to start off with fairly gentle music, and it's going to get progressively more like pop bands throughout the night. My band are even playing at one point, so if you want to see my band play, you want to see me play bass, then Friday the 4th of September, come here, and we'll be playing at some point. But there'll be a collection of musicians, some of which I've worked with for a long time, some of which I taught at the sixth form previously, so it'll be a really lovely evening. And finally, thank you to all of you who had your hands cast earlier for the piece of artwork that we are helping to make. So the artwork is coordinated by the Worcester Plinth, it's funded by the Arts Council England, and it's called Hands of Worcester. And it's by a lady called Jessica Mary Monk, who you might have met out there. And when it's complete, it's going to tour 9 different locations around the cities, including parks, squares, and housing estates. It's called Hands of Worcester because we're getting 200 residents and people in Worcester to have their hands cast. We're hoping to get a mixture of local representatives and local organisations and community groups. And the artwork is about celebrating both the things that make us different and the similarities between us, and how our hands reflect our personality, our work, our hobbies and interests, and our cultures and diversities. I'm sure it'll be a really lovely piece once it's finished, and I'm looking forward to that. So, with all of that said, we will move on to public participation. And I believe we have 2 people who would like to speak this evening. So I will remind you that you have 5 minutes to speak each, and it will be timed, I'm hoping, by Claire. Yes, she's on it. So we'll start with Pauline Burgess to come and speak to us. Thank you.
Hello. Janworth, 9 years old, Independent Jimmy, 7 years old, and Hawks Rock, 6 years old, are horses that were killed at Worcester Racecourse in the space of 3 weeks this year so far. Last year, 8 horses were killed at Worcester. 1 horse, Monsant, was destroyed coming out of the paddock before getting on the track. The racing industry claims to be improving welfare all the time, yet injuries and deaths are a regular occurrence. Horses are allowed to be whipped and are running in all weathers, including heat waves. This is why welfare improvements are never enough. I would therefore like to ask why Worcester City Council is allowing the spectacle of horses being beaten and dying in the name of entertainment, when the land could be used for enlightened human activities instead. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You will receive a written response? Yes, you will receive a written response. I'd call on Andy Taylor now to come and speak. Thank you.
Right, good evening all. I'm Andy Taylor, I'm the Vice Chair of Warndon Villages Parish Council, but I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of the Chair, Stuart Forrest, who unfortunately can't be here tonight. You will be voting this evening on the preferred option following stage 1 of the CGR. Before commenting on the outcome, I would like to place on record my thanks to the working group and council officers who have worked diligently and professionally within very challenging timescales, including the visits to 4 comparable town councils across the country, which have clearly informed a thorough and well-evidenced report. Warndon Villages and St Peters were each represented on that working group, and I want to acknowledge that this has been a genuinely collaborative process. Having reviewed the consultation results, one statistic immediately stood out. A total of 916 responses were received from an electorate of 76,555, a response rate of 1.2%. No legislation prescribes a minimum response rate for a CGR, However, by comparison, Parliament requires around 5% of an electorate to petition for a CGR. It's therefore a useful benchmark to recognise that overall participation in this consultation was relatively low. What is striking is the difference in engagement between the existing parish council areas and the unparished parts of Worcester. Of the 916 responses, 622, 2/3, came from the 2 existing parish councils, representing 4.9% of their electorate. By contrast, the remaining responses from the unparished area, which has a far larger electorate, represent a participation rate of well under 0.5%. This suggests that where communities are actively engaged and local councils communicate directly with residents, participation increases considerably. Most importantly, when the consultation responses are read in full, a consistent theme emerges, and I would note that this is not simply my own reading, but the largest single theme identified in the Council's own analysis at Appendix 4. Residents repeatedly expressed their support for retaining both Warndon Villages Parish Council and St Peter's Parish Council. They value local representation, local accountability and decisions being taken by people who understand their communities. The consultation also demonstrates real appetite for local representation across the city as a whole. 76% of respondents said they would like a parish or town council. 59% said they would be willing to pay a precept to fund one. 54% said they would participate more in local democracy if one existed. And tellingly, among respondents who do not currently live in a parished area, only 1 in 5 favoured a single council for the whole city. Twice that number favoured a new council for the unparished area alone, alongside the existing parishes. These two views are not mutually exclusive. Supporting a new town council for the unparished parts of the city does not imply support for abolishing the 2 existing parish councils. And the evidence tonight shows residents overwhelmingly agree. I'm pleased to see that the Monitoring Officer's report reaches the same conclusion that the courts have required of authorities in this position. Members will be well aware of the High Court judgment in 2019 concerning Britwell Parish Council, in which Mr. Justice Lewis held that before an established parish council is abolished, there should be clear evidence that local opinion broadly supports abolition, sustained over a period the guidance treats as 2 electoral cycles. The report before you tonight reaches precisely that conclusion at paragraph 8.2, that this consultation has not provided sufficient evidence of the clear and sustained local support that abolition would require. That is not a legal technicality, it reflects what residents have actually told this council. For these reasons, I welcome the recommendation before you this evening. Option 1, a new town or parish council for the currently unparished area, with Warndon Villages and St Peter's continuing as they are. It is the option best supported by the evidence, best aligned with the statutory tests of community identity and effective, convenient governments, and best able to command public confidence going into stage 2. I respectfully ask members to support it as recommended and to ensure that the strong message from residents in every part of the city is reflected in the Council's decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You will also receive a written response. So we will move on to questions. So the Council will now consider questions that have been submitted in accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 9. The questions have been circulated with you. We will go to our first question, which is from Councillor Alan Amos to Councillor Lynn Denham, who's the leader of the Council.
Thank you, Mayor. The question is to ask the Leader of the Council that, in view of the recent adoption of the Worcester City Strength in Community strategy, designed to enhance community engagement and public involvement in shaping council services, and given that local residents around the Green in Lower Wick are content with the current extent of the grass cutting on and around the Green and do not wish to see any changes to it, will she give a commitment that the current pattern of cutting will continue and that the council will not leave any part unkempt and overgrown by reducing the area on which the grass is currently cut?
Thank you for your question. There has been no material change to the management regime for the green. The area will continue to be maintained as amenity grass, with the grass cutting undertaken in line with the council's current operational standards for non-recreational amenity space.
Do you have a follow-up question for that?
Yes, Mayor, I'm very happy with that answer, but rather than risk being too happy unnecessarily, could Councillor Denham confirm then that there is no government guidelines or requirement that certain areas of the grass which are now cut may in future not be cut for environmental or other reasons? In other words, the current pattern is as it is and will remain so, notwithstanding any government guidance.
There are currently no planned changes, and I don't think this is a devolved responsibility and involves the expert and professionalism of our officers.
Thank you. We will go to question 2, which is also from Councillor Alan Amos.
Thank you, Mayor. To ask the Leader of the Council, will the Leader of the Council tell me what, in planning terms, are the essential differences between a hotel and a hostel?
Worcester City planning officers have actually looked at this question in great detail in the recent past and sought expert advice. I know that this information has been shared with Councillor Amos. I really don't see the value in my reading it out to him in this place.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Amos?
Yes, Chair, and it is actually a question to the Leader of the Council, which is, given that the Founds Hotel now locks doors and imposes 24-hour security, is booked out indefinitely, whose residents can be sharing rooms with complete strangers on a rapid turnover basis, where rooms are booked out with no end date, and allegedly all the luxury items have been removed, in what ways is it different to a hostel?
Referring to the guidance which you have seen, a hotel is commercial visitor accommodation comprising predominantly private rooms, often with private bathrooms, and a range of ancillary services, reception, dining areas, and other guest amenities.
Thank you both. We go to question 3, which is also from Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Mayor. The question is again to the Leader of the Council. Given the current consultation on all or part of Worcester City becoming a parish council, following the introduction of local government reform, without any clear statement of what powers and responsibilities such a body would have, will the Leader of the Council please confirm what powers and responsibilities she is seeking for any such new council to have, and will she confirm that, consistent with virtually every other parish council throughout the country, members will give their time on a voluntary basis and there will be no request for or acceptance of members' allowances?
This is not my decision. This is a democratic body. We have before us on the agenda a very detailed report for our consideration this evening. So that is a matter for democratic debate and decision making. There was also an all-member briefing 2 weeks ago. I don't know whether Councillor Amos attended that and whether he's actually read the detail of the reports in front of us, but the information he's seeking is within those.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, could I ask the Leader of the Council to indulge me and give me then her personal opinion on the question I've just asked, what she thinks as opposed to what the Council may or may not think?
I will contribute to the debate and the decision making when we get to that item on the agenda.
Thank you both. Question 4 is from Councillor Sarah Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is for Councillor Denham, Leader of the Council. Can the Leader provide a public update on the current position regarding the unresolved transfer of public open space and landscaped land in Warndon Villages, including ownership, maintenance responsibilities, drainage infrastructure, engagement with developers, and the next steps towards resolving these long-standing issues?
Thank you. A meeting with Persimmon Homes and Taylor Wimpey on the 3rd of June agreed that land transfers should proceed where there are no issues, with further review of areas affected by drainage concerns. A shared online Teams channel was created to exchange transfer plans. All parties remain committed to progressing the transfers, and Worcester City Council continues to provide plans and liaise with the developers and their solicitors for action. A legal claim for possession has been discussed but not pursued following renewed engagement of all parties. The operational services team maintains grassed areas only, with responsibility for trees remaining with the developers.
Councillor Murray, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes. Can the Leader commit to providing ward councillors and residents with regular public updates until these matters are resolved?
I don't know enough of the detail in the sense there is presumably some commercial sensitivity and legal sensitivity around it. I don't want to make a commitment on something without checking the risks involved.
Thank you. Question 5 is from Councillor John Rudge.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want the Leader of the Council to keep repeating yourself, but just bear with me. It illustrates the problems we're having in our area. Given the practical impact these unresolved land transfers continue to have on residents, will a Leader commit to taking a personal leadership role in driving this matter forward and ensuring the Council actively pursues a resolution with all relevant parties?
I say I've not been familiar with the detail up to this point. I'm happy to kind of pursue the conversation with officers. There is undoubtedly something as we will be moving towards a unitary council in kind of regularising our asset position and ownership of around a variety of things. So I think that's an additional push for kind of good housekeeping at this point.
Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, Mayor. Do you think we can get it across the line before we become a unitary council?
I really don't know. No comment, because I don't know the detail. I don't know the difficulties and the obstacles. There are clearly 3 parties involved. It's not just this council that is involved.
Thank you both. We'll go to question 6, which is from Councillor Alex Mace.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is to Councillor Riaz, Chair of Communities Committee. So I would like to understand what level of enforcement we are taking against landlords in Worcester. So for the years 2024 to 25 and 2025 to 26, how many civil penalties have been issued to landlords in Worcester? For those civil penalties, what is the total revenue value of the civil penalties? And each of those years, how much revenue has this council actually recovered from those penalties? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mace, for your question. In 2024 to 2025, no civil penalties were issued, but 77 properties were improved following officer intervention. This includes 1 prohibition order being issued, 4 improvement notices issued, and 6 hazard awareness notices issued. In 25-26, 1 civil penalty was issued due to an unlicensed HMO. The value of this was £5,000, of which a payment plan was agreed on the repayment of that £5,000 fine in increments. A further compliance notice was served due to the breaches in minimum energy efficiency standards, MEES as our acronym, defying the compliance. The value of this was £500, which was paid in full in Q1 of 26-27. During the year, 27 properties were improved following officer intervention. This includes 1 emergency prohibition order being issued, 3 hazard awareness notices issued, and 1 emergency remediation notices were issued. No further financial penalties were issued over the course of these 2 years.
Do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Mayor, thank you. Thank you for that information. So considering the large gap between estimated Category 1 hazards in private sector rentals and the number of found resulting from complaints, would you agree with me that increasing the proactive enforcement will improve the quality of housing for tenants and raise much needed revenue that can be spent on improving the provision of affordable housing in this city? Thank you.
Thanks, Alex, for your supplementary. I see the pointed nature of the question in there. Absolutely, more enforcement means an improvement in standards, and we want more enforcement to improve the standards of quality of living. But I think it's important not to judge the success of any housing enforcement service simply by counting fines. I think success is measured by whether tenants are living in safer, healthier homes. Over the last 2 years, we've seen dozens of properties being improved following officer intervention. Most recently, in the first quarter of this financial year, which you haven't asked the figures for, we've already secured improvements to 27 further properties. That's exactly the outcome where residents are expecting of us. We've also strengthened our housing enforcement policy, invested in additional enforcement capacity, and are continuing to improve how cases are recorded and managed. And officers now have a better system, better resources and stronger powers available to them. We're also seeing the positive impact of the Labour government's renters' rights reforms. Tenants have greater confidence to come forward, report poor conditions and seek help, which means more unsafe properties are being identified and improved. And I appreciate some members appear to have judged success purely by the numbers of fines issued. This isn't a Labour approach. Of course, where landlords deliberately ignore the law, we will use the full range of enforcement powers available to us, but enforcement is always a proportionate and our priority is to secure compliance. We've got over probably 2,800 landlords in Worcester, and it's in our best interest to work with them to improve the housing stock, using stronger enforcement where necessary and while working constructively where possible to raise standards across the city. I think the difference of approach is that we on this side believe in strong regulation backed by effective enforcement and also in working with responsible landlords to raise the standards across the sector. So, we want the best for it, but slightly different approaches. We want to work with the tenants there, improve the stock, and as a last measure, employ the powers that we have in order to enforce our policies. Thank you.
Thank you to all the councillors for your questions and for the responses. I've gained some fans since this has been happening, which is very nice. We do not have any notices of motions that have been submitted to this meeting, so we are going to continue to the next substantive item, which is item 8. I say that we are going to continue. We will continue unless anyone has any particular objections in terms of wanting a short break because of the heat. Are we all okay to continue? Yes? Okay, we'll try and get this done as swiftly as possible. In order to get this done as swiftly as possible, I have a couple of things to ask you. Firstly, can you make sure that you're speaking into the microphone and as closely to the microphone as possible? In fact, I'm going to move mine slightly closer because there is quite a lot of background noise with the fans. Secondly, is that our next item will go about in a very specific way. So we will have it proposed and second. We will have a debate, and then there will be 2 votes at the end of the debate, okay? So the first vote will be about which of the four preferred options, or the four options, is our preferred option. And the second vote will be everything else within this item. Does that make sense? There will not be a debate between those two votes. I will repeat this again in a minute. We've got Councillor Gregson who would like to speak.
Mayor, could you explain that, please? Because the agenda that was issued very clearly states 4 items in the recommendation. It's very clear what those 4 items refer to within the report, and there's no indication that you were going to change that in advance. So I'd like to know under what rules you're operating.
We are just separating it out. So we are going to look at part 3.
With respect, Mayor, you're not separating it out.
And then we're going to vote on all the other items, so 1, 2 and 4. In order to agree on part 3, which is agrees preferred options, we kind of need to have picked a preferred option by that point in order to do the others.
I must insist, Mayor, I believe you're wrong. The preferred option is very clearly stated on page 19, paragraph 7. And I don't think that you can change that, given this was the published order paper.
The options are recommended, and it's strongly recommended, that option 1, it is, but they are not absolutely set in stone. So we are deciding tonight for which option goes forward to the next stage of consultation. And I think it's important because this is such a huge decision for the city, and it will affect absolutely everyone in the city. I think it's very important that we do that stage where we pick our preferred option. Obviously, if you would like a particular option, then please do vote for it. And I'm sure that if enough people vote for it, that's what we will go with. Does that make sense?
No, Mayor, it still doesn't, because unless you can define the difference between the words preferred option at paragraph 7 and the words alternative options considered at paragraph 8, then I think you're wrong.
Okay, I'll let Sian come in on this one.
Through you, Chair, in response to feedback from Chair of Audit yesterday, officers considered this. This is not an intention to change the printed recommendations, it's more how they progressed to the vote. So the first 2 recommendations could be taken first. Notes the progress. Does everybody note the progress? Considers the outcome. Does everyone consider the outcome? But the third is called agrees the preferred option for publication. And what was pointed out was, as written, there needs to be clarity about what is the preferred option when people vote on it. So it's not proposed that there's a show of hands for each of the option. It is that, is the preferred option the option in the papers? Then that's voted on. And then the 4th recommendation agrees the preferred arrangements follows as a result of having taken the 3rd recommendation. So it's just about taking them in sequence, really.
It's perfectly clear to me, Mayor, what is recommended. It's unfortunate if the chair of the committee who's making the proposal doesn't understand that.
Okay. Shall we actually go to this motion? Because I appreciate it's warm in here and lots of people will want to get this done as swiftly as possible. So do we have a proposer for this motion? Yes, Councillor Lawrenson.
Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm not treading on toes. So that's been introduced. So I'd had in my notes that Claire, you'd be doing a preamble, and then I'd be proposing. Okay, I'll say that again. Hopefully I'll do something correctly. Yes, I will hold it. Thank you, Mother. Yes. My understanding was that Claire would do a preamble and then I would propose. Is that okay?
Thank you, Councillor Lawrenson. The Community Governance Review has reached a key milestone within the timetable agreed by members as part of the terms of reference for the review, and that was agreed in February 26. The report presented to members this evening asks Council to note the progress made by the Community Governance Review member working group, which includes members of Audit and Governance Committee, parish councillors and officers of the council, to consider the outcome of stage 1 public consultation exercise on future governance arrangements for Worcester and the findings of the Community Governance Review Working Group. The findings of the working group, as set out in the report, are as a result of just under 1,000 responses from stage 1 of the consultation and extensive research, including 6 online or in-person meetings with other established town councils across the country. These meetings gave the working group the opportunity to have in-depth discussions with council leaders and town clerks regarding matters such as set-up arrangements, their current and future operating models and success experiences, and any lessons learned along the way. And you will see this information in full detail as part of one of the appendices to the report. And just to cover what we've already talked about, members are also asked this evening to agree the preferred option for publication and agree the arrangements for the second stage of public consultation exercise, which is currently scheduled to commence in August 26. Members are asked to be mindful that they're being asked to agree the preferred option for consultation. The preferred option, as set out in the report, as we have just discussed, is option 1. Agreeing the preferred option at this stage of the review means that the option will be subject to consultation with Worcester residents and other key stakeholders. Members are not agreeing the final recommendations for future community governance arrangements at this time. Final recommendations will be reported to Council in November following the close and evaluation of the second stage of consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Now I will ask if there's a proposer.
Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 Palestine. Can you hear me? Yeah, good. As stated in the report, on the 24th of February 2026, Worcester City Council agreed to carry out a community governance review. The reason for this is that Worcester City Council is due to be abolished in a reorganisation of local government initiated by the Secretary of State, which is currently scheduled for April 2028. As stated on the first page of the Stage 1 consultation, 2 parts of the city already have parish councils, and we've heard them being mentioned in the public participation. That's St Peter, the Great County, and Warndon Villages. However, other Worcester residents would have no equivalent local voice unless new arrangements are created. Members of the Community Governance Review Working Group, which I've been very pleased to be part of, have met councillors and officers from 6 town councils: Weston-super-Mare, Durham, Hereford, Shrewsbury, Northampton and Kidderminster. These visits have been extremely interesting and useful. I'd like to repeat my thanks to officers at Worcester City Council for arranging the visits and for the huge amount of work they put into organising the Community Governance Review. I'd also like to express extra thanks to Matthew Comer for his work on the Stage 1 consultation in particular. The Stage 1 consultation responses demonstrate overall support for creating a new town or parish council for Worcester. As has already been said, there were 916 responses, 68% of which were from people who live in a parished area. Naturally, there was a high level of support for the retention of St Peter the Great Parish Council and Warndon Villages Parish Council, albeit only a fraction of the electorate took part in the consultation. You will have seen in the report that there are several options in terms of future community governance in Worcester. Many factors have been considered by the working group when selecting a preferred option. Option 1 is to have one council covering the currently unparished areas of Worcester. I hope that members here will have had the chance to read Appendix 5 attached to this report, which clearly sets out the pros and cons of each of the options mentioned in the covering report. I think it's important to emphasise 2 things at this point. The working group is advisory only. Also, final discussions and decisions will be made by this council, full council, on 24th of November. As has been said already, we're voting on a recommendation that would then require further consultation. 2 more paragraphs to go. Thank you for bearing with me. I appreciate that there may be concerns about extra council tax for residents if a new council was formed. Officers have estimated that a new council would cost each resident between £60 and £100 per year. As stated in 11.1 of the report, any new council will be unable to set a precept for its first year and will therefore need to be funded by this council, Worcester City Council. Thereafter, a new town parish council would be funded by a new precept with no financial obligations for the future unitary authority unless by agreement. So, in conclusion, I think the cost of a new council has to be weighed against the cost of not having a local council anymore. We are all here because we believe in the value of democracy and because we love the city we currently represent. We did not ask for the reorganisation of local government, nor did we ask for the abolition of Worcester City Council. Why would we do that? However, we have an opportunity to ensure that residents in Worcester continue to be represented at a local level. Thanks so much for bearing with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have someone to second this item? Councillor Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor. I am pleased to second the recommendation that we support option 1 and progress it to stage 2 of the consultation. This week we expect to hear the government's decision on whether our future unitary authority will be a single Worcestershire Council or separate North and South Worcestershire authorities. Whichever model is chosen, Worcester City Council will cease to exist, along with many of the directly accountable local services that residents value. Our task through this governance review is not to recreate what is being lost or moved, but to establish a new arrangement that complements the future unitary authority, whatever its final shape, and strengthens local representation for the people of Worcester. Having considered the report, I believe option 1 provides the strongest and most balanced solution. It performs well against our key criteria, particularly in relation to democratic accountability, community identity and cohesion, and continuity of service. The outcome of the first stage of consultation also supports this option. I was fortunate to attend most of the fact-finding visits to neighbouring councils that had already been through this process. Seeing their experiences firsthand was invaluable. The clear message was that retaining existing parish councils while creating a single new council for the remaining unparished areas of the city was a sensible, practical and effective approach. Their experience gives me confidence that option 1 is the right choice for Worcester. Option 1 preserves the valuable work of our existing parish councils while ensuring that the residents of the rest of Worcester also have strong, locally accountable representation. It builds on what already works well rather than replacing it unnecessarily. It is also important to recognise that without a City of Worcester Council, we will become the only area within the new unitary authority without this level of local representation, despite being its principal city. That would be an unfortunate anomaly and one that would be difficult to address in future. As the outgoing district council for Worcester, I think we have a responsibility to take this opportunity forward and continue to explore the strongest possible foundation for local democracy. For those reasons, I am pleased to second the recommendation that the council supports option 1 and progresses it to stage 2 of consultation, keeping us on track to complete this work by November 26.
Thank you. We will now move to the debate, starting with Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to speak in support of option 1 as set out in the Community Governance Review documents, and I do so having been a member of the working group that examined this issue. We held numerous meetings involving both city and parish councillors, and we undertook 6 visits and meetings with comparable councils. We looked at the evidence carefully before reaching our recommendation, and the message we heard from every council was remarkably consistent. As unitary authorities have faced increasing financial pressures, they have had to focus on statutory responsibilities, such as social care, children's services and SEND. That has meant town and parish councils have become increasingly important. They are no longer simply delivering the nice-to-have extras. They provide the services residents associate with a thriving local community, maintaining public spaces, flower displays, organising festivals and cultural events, supporting local markets, leading remembrance commemorations and protecting local identity. Councils such as Shrewsbury, Weston and Hereford have grown in importance over time, taking on more responsibilities and becoming stronger local voices as unitary authorities have inevitably concentrated on their statutory duties. That is why I simply do not accept the argument that Worcester does not need a town or city council because the new unitary authority will provide everything. The evidence we saw says exactly the opposite. Without a dedicated local council, Worcester risks losing many of the services and traditions that make this city special, and the consultation supports that conclusion. As we've heard, 62% of respondents say they do not believe that the new unitary council alone would meet Worcester's local needs. 76% supported the creation of a town or parish council, including a majority of the unparished areas, and 59% said they would be prepared to pay a precept to secure those local services and that local representation. Those are not the responses of people looking for something for nothing. Those are the responses of residents who recognise the value of local democracy and are willing to invest in it. And Worcester is worth investing in, a proud and historic city. As the United States celebrates its 250th anniversary this year, Worcester can perhaps say, hold my beer. This is a city with nearly 2,000 years of history and over 800 years of civic government. Are we really saying that in 2028, this historic city could have no dedicated council speaking solely for its people? Hereford has one, Kidderminster has one, Shrewsbury has one, Bewdley, Stourport, Pershall, Evesham and even Bromsgrove, even Broadway all have their local councils, and Redditch is going through a similar process as us. So why not Worcester? In an ideal world, I would have preferred option 2, creating a council covering the whole of the city, including St Peters and Warndon, but I respect the views expressed through the consultation. If anything, the strong support for those existing parish councils demonstrate just how valued parish councils become when they are established and work well. Option 1 is therefore the right solution. It respects existing parish councils whilst ensuring that the rest of Worcester is not left without its own democratic voice. Tonight, we still have control of our own destiny. If we fail to act now, I believe we will find ourselves back here in 5 or 10 years' time, as places like Kidderminster and Durham once did, trying to persuade an apathetic unitary authority to let Worcester have the council we could have initiated today. So let us show some leadership. Let us ensure that this great city continues to have its own voice and its own identity. I urge members to support option 1. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Councillor Scott.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I want to illustrate this process by just looking at the city centre and particularly how the High Street works. It's the focus of my attention as a ward councillor. It's noticed by everyone. This Worcester City Centre really defines what Worcester's all about. We all see it, whether you're a tourist, a visitor, a business, or whatever. And it's a key part of the city in terms of the jobs that are provided, a place for businesses, a community centre, and, as I say, for visitors. How would this all work in the city centre? First of all, I think it's necessary to go back to the local government reorganisation that we're talking about. And many of us will be aware of the complication which we have to go through when services are provided by 2 main councils, the county council and the city council. You will be particularly aware there. The council's first services are listed on page 45, I think, or 39 of the report in one of the appendices, what the county does and what the city does. And there's clear overlap between things like the public realm we look after and the traffic regulation orders and the highways planning that the county does. We have an overlap in terms of planning issues, in economic development terms, the creation of jobs, in terms of public health and in terms of culture. One authority is responsible for museums, the other is responsible for general cultural things. We spend a lot of the time chasing each other's tails about who does what, and it's not clear. So, the first benefits of local government reorganisation, whatever shape of unitary council comes up, will be to streamline this process, and we will have a clear, simple structure for local government, the primary local authorities in the area, and I, for one, welcome it. I think unitary councils are the way forward. However, I think the arguments for a parish council on top of these statutory services is really important, and the new unitary will be really busy with all sorts of really important things which are going to cost a lot of money. The things which people particularly notice about the high street and the city centre are the quality of the public realm, what events happen. So the parish council, for example, I could easily see taking on board the additional floral planting which we should see in the city, planting boxes, improved specific maintenance. We can see that that events in the city will be run by the parish council, and the control of buskers, I expect, would be run by the parish council, which is clearly a bit out of control at the moment. It's possible that street markets in the future would be run by parish councils. It's certainly the case with the other town councils that we've seen. Some town councils actually run the tourist promotion services, the tourist information centre, and always the new parish council is involved in a detailed local consultation on planning and licensing issues. It's a voice for local people in these important issues which affect the future. And I'm not saying the parish council would do those things, but they're important consultation. And generally, the parish council will represent the city's particular interest and the wider interest which the unitary will be looking after. It will allow us to provide a focused voice on the local issues which matter so much to the city centre. Some of the parish councils we've spoken to are really instrumental in pulling together very local partnerships where the public sector, the councils, the police and health sector work really well with businesses and with and communities. Working in partnership together is very, very important, and that could be a real role for the parish council, along with working alongside with the business improvement district, which is a key part of it. So I hope that's helpful in terms of how unitary status will work and how parish councils could be something on top of that. And I commend this proposal to us.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question of clarification, please, to Councillor Lawrenson. In your proposal, you said that each resident or each household, you said that each resident will pay £60 to £100 each year. Did you actually mean each household? Because obviously there'd be a huge financial impact on some households if it's each resident.
Councillor Lawrenson, you've been named, so would you like to confirm?
Thank you, Mayor. I believe that's correct, Councillor Murray. I meant household, although I'd have to look back at Appendix 5, in which the pros and cons are laid out to get the exact reference, but I think I've made an error there. I think it's household. Happy for that to be confirmed or denied, but thank you for that point.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrenson. Is that all? Is that all? Okay, then we'll move to Councillor Agar.
Thank you. Speaking in support of option 1 this evening, I think what I really would argue is that what we're proposing in option 1 contributes strongly to our local identity, our local culture and the cohesion of our communities. We have 400 years of being a city. We have 400 years of mayors. And I hope very much that we'll be able to continue to do that sort of thing. I think it's important that we maintain our civic dignities on behalf of residents. I've talked to a lot of residents who think that that's important. And of course, option 1 respects the desire of existing parishes to maintain their own identity and privileges. And hopefully that they will wish to do that closely with ours as well, that they will want to do some things in partnership with us perhaps. One of my main concerns is I don't actually know as yet, and I think there's a discussion to be had about where the function of, say, the Armed Forces Champion should sit. I tend to think myself it should sit at local level, because there's a lot of liaising with local veterans to be done. That can't really be carried out at a strategic level. The Covenant will operate at a strategic level, yes, as it currently does. But I do think that we need a different tier of effort. Doesn't mean I think I should be it. It means I think it should happen. And I very much think we should maintain our Covenant pledge, if we become a parish, to hold a conference each year which helps veterans to stay in touch with what's going on in the Covenant and be informed and speak to people of real influence within the Covenant. We were privileged to have a top civil servant come and talk about the development of the Covenant last year. I'm hoping we'll be able to do more of that sort of thing. And I recently attended the National Covenant Conference in Portsmouth. One of the things that came out of that was districts really very much wanted to have designated Covenant champions, armed forces champions. So I hope very much that you would support something like that. And I know how much our veterans appreciate us having commemorative events. And I mean, after all, why wouldn't we? Our regiment has the freedom of the city. It's very important to them, to all the other armed forces that we deal with, to have commemorative events that express their need, well, that actually acknowledge the service that they've given to their country and what it means to us locally to have them within our communities and to support them within our communities, because the transition from forces life to civilian life is really quite difficult. It is a very alien environment in the armed forces, very difficult to explain to somebody who's not been in it. And so I hope very much that you will continue to support commemorative events, various events that we have that are of great importance, not only to our local armed forces, but to a lot of residents who show up to them. So I hope very much you'll support that. Thank you.
Councillor Agar. Councillor Lewin.
Thank you, Chair. It's clear that, community with strong levels of civic participation are good for us. They carry benefits for the wider body public, life satisfaction, health, individual and collective efficiency. What I'm a bit concerned about is in the public consultation, out of the WR1 postcode, we only had 62 people respond. We've got over 10,000 people living in WR1. I think one of the problems with this whole thing, it's actually quite mind-blowing. People don't understand politics, they're getting on with their daily lives, and actually it's quite hard to explain to people who don't have a parish council to understand what a parish council does. So it doesn't surprise me that people who've got a parish council say, yes, we want to keep it, whereas people within the city centre only know the city council and think, well, wait a minute, what's happening? I don't understand it, because they don't understand what the new unitary is going to do either. So it's quite complicated, and I think in the next consultation we've got to somehow get that across as a tangible thing that people can understand better when they don't live in a parish council. The problem is we're in our own bubble of understanding what this is about. We've got to think how people who aren't engaged but care about their city, how they're going to engage. The other thing is that, democracy works when it's down at the closest level. And, in the city, we have loads of community groups who, because of the way we run this city council, they have representation. And going forward, that's really important in whatever happens. One of the things that I was at the LGA conference last week, and what other authorities who've gone through this process said, was that one of the things where city council areas have changed, there's actually been a kind of sense of loss of what people have gone through and what they're missing. And people are saying, oh, well, our old city council were much better at this, in a way that we never get those compliments now, but we'll probably get them in 5 years' time. So, you know, this is a very complicated thing. I think it is also quite emotional for people. You know, the fact that there might not be a ward that says Arboretum anymore, when Arboretum has got such a strong sense of community about it, with such good community groups, that does worry me. But because of that, you know, I want to listen to the people who have voted and expressed their opinion, but I really hope that people who live in the city really engage in this process going forwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lewing. Councillor Kimberley.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to scroll back a little bit in this conversation. I intend fully to vote in favour of option 1 this evening, but I do want to raise a couple of small concerns that I have with the way that the public consultation has broken down so far. We've heard a lot of warm words from colleagues about how people will value a Worcester Town Council, but I worry that a lot of that is based on the 900 or so responses that we've had from the city. That is a response rate that is approximately a back of envelope math here. It's less than 1 in 10. Is that less than 100? It's a small proportion. It's less than 1 in 100. It's a small proportion of the total residents of the city. Moreover, 2/3 of those came from Warndon Villages and St. Peter's alone, both of which are already parished and both of which represent relatively wealthy parts of our city. It would certainly be accurate to say that those parishes and their residents very much wish to continue as they are, but I would be cautious about drawing overly strong conclusions just yet. But that is obviously what the next round of consultation is for, and that is why I'm happy to vote for option 1 this evening. But I will urge colleagues to keep eyes and ears open, to listen honestly, and to make sure that it is the voices of our residents and not the voices only of ourselves that are carried forwards and heard the loudest. Worcester is a magnificent city, worthy of being represented at every possible level of government. My hope is that what will emerge from the process is a town council that provides for the events and the activities that we so cherish here in this chamber, in partnership with a strong South Worcestershire unitary. Crossing my fingers here. All I wish to do with my comments this evening is to challenge colleagues all around the chamber to ensure that the next round of consultation casts that net widely, particularly to take in the views of residents in deprived areas of the city, such as Warndon, such as Tolladine, such as Dines Green. Residents in these places have far too much experience of being done unto. My hope is that they will come out of this process feeling that they too have had their say. Most importantly, I want them to feel the benefits of having that town council, of having that strong local representation and democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kimberley. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of LGR was to remove a level of local government and make it simpler for residents to understand and access democracy. Instead, we have a city split potentially into 3 by imposed boundaries based on the will of 1% of the electorate. Residents will have a Worcester postal code, but be part of one of 3 different parish councils. The 3 smaller town and parish councils will have less influence in the political balance of an urban city if it comes into any form of conflict with the larger, more rural, predominantly rural unitary. Somehow, in the process of simplifying the structure of local democracy, we have made it more complicated for people to grasp, and I hope that the people will understand it better before they actually go to the polls.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Councillor Jagger.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to start, first apologise on behalf of Councillor Meryl Alcold, who was very engaged in the process of attending the meetings and the consultation, but she's attending her daughter's graduation tonight and was unable to be here today. And I would also like to say that if the Central Labour government had actually kept its promise on remote participation, she might have actually participated today. But that's beside the point today. We are going to talk about the Liberal Democrat view on the matter at hand. The Liberal Democrat group welcomes the finding of the first stage of community governance review, which shows strong support for local representation, neighborhood democracy, and protecting Worcester's civic identity. Residents have made it clear that they value decision-making at the close to their communities alongside the preservation of Worcester's historic identity. At the same time, they have rightly highlighted they want to avoid unnecessary duplication and ensure good value for money. From the outset, the Liberal Democrats opposed the abolition of Worcester City Council. We believed then, as we do now, that Worcester deserves a strong local representation and that decisions affecting our communities should be made close to the residents as possible. The same principle has guided our approach through this review, just as we did not believe that Worcester City Council should be abolished against the wishes of local people. We do not believe that the existing parish councils of some St. Peter's and Warndon villages should be abolished or fundamentally changed against the wishes of their residents. The consultation demonstrates clear support for retaining both existing parish councils, and we believe that that view should be respected. I would like to acknowledge the concerns about the scope of the consultation, and as a group, we are committed to ensure that we do what we can to increase participation, and we will do what we can to ensure good value for money. We recognize that we initially had reservations about whether a separate parish arrangement would leave Worcester less united than a single citywide town council, and initially had reservations about the potential cost-benefit calculation of a new institution. However, having considered the consultation responses, the evidence gathered from other authorities, the work from the Community Governance Review Working Group, we have concluded that option 1 represents the strongest solution for Worcester. Creating a new parish council for the current unparished part of the city while retaining the existing councils strikes the right balance. It protects local democracy, respects the wishes of existing communities, preserves Worcester's civic heritage, and ensures that neighborhoods continue to have elected representatives focused solely on their local issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jagger. Councillor Denham.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I want to say a huge thank you to the working group, to officers and to everybody who participated in the consultation and the visits to other parishes. I think, as we've come to expect of our council, this is actually an exemplary piece of work. There's an enormous amount within this report and within the appendices. And in fact, at the local government conference last week, I was talking to a colleague from Gloucester City. They've begun to think about this. They're in a very similar position to Worcester City. They're one of our kind of 3 choirs partners, but he had no level of understanding. They hadn't yet begun their governance review. And I actually recommended him to look at the papers that we've got tonight for the references and for an understanding. I appreciate potential confusions. I think it's really important for people to understand. Well, firstly, colleagues have mentioned the benefits of a unitary council. Because of our history and that we have very limited experience of parish councils, now that is very different to our neighbours and our partners. Now, Malvern Hills and Wychavon are entirely parished. Now, that is the norm for them. They absolutely understand the differences, the relationships, what a parish council can do, and what it can't do. And the most important thing is that no matter the geographic size of a parish council, the legislative framework and limitations are exactly the same. They can only provide discretionary services. They can provide advice and opinions to higher authorities. They can't run the bin service. They can't make a planning decision. So I think it's really important to understand the limitations. I absolutely understand the concern about, well, what is it going to cost me and why? And the quote of £60 a year, it's right to clarify that, per property, per Band D property. And what we're actually talking about is £5 per calendar month. So for people with a lower rated council tax band, even less than that. This is not kind of mega millions in an era in which everybody's concerned about the cost of living and value for money. This is £5 per calendar month as a sort of mid-range, the standard nomenclature used for council tax. And I think, in fact, within Worcester City, the majority of our properties are on a lower banding than that. Absolutely well done to the working group. I think option one absolutely is the most sensible one and has been very carefully measured. It's listening to the consultation so far, and also importantly looking at the parameters, looking at the experience of other councils that have gone down this route and are at different stages on that journey. And well done for a good piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Denham. Councillor Mace.
Thank you, Mayor. So first off, I want to say my deep thank you to Councillors Lawrenson and DeSera for chairing the working group, and all members of the working group for giving their time, particularly those who went on recce's with the councils, which unfortunately I couldn't go on, but I'm very grateful that other people were able to visit all those places, and all of the good and reasonable debate we had around what we wanted and what we were aiming for. I do want to say a particular thank you to Claire and Julian and Matt for their support and efforts in this process to get us to this point, because it has been a huge amount of work to get all the reports done. I have been on a bit of a journey with this matter. When it was originally suggested at Audit and Governance that we recommend to full council that we start this process, I abstained because I was concerned about asking residents to pay another council tax precept when the focus of the discussion, at least at that point, had seemed to be around preserving the Guildhall and the ceremonial aspects that the City Council provides, neither of which require a town council to continue. But as we work through the detail of this and hearing about what services other town councils provide, parks, allotments, venues, additional community safety work that may get lost in a unitary authority, I've seen the benefit that a town council could bring to Worcester. It would retain a local voice. It would allow us to have a body to deliver what people consider important for Worcester, events like the Worcester Show and the Victorian Fair, our green flag parks, our allotments, etc. But I do have a but coming here. I live in Worcester. I moved to Worcester in 2008. I got a job in Worcester in 2009. I said goodbye to my miscarried daughter at Worcester Crematorium in 2012. My children were born in Worcester in 2013 and 16. I was elected to the City Council in 2024, and for every single one of those events, Worcester hasn't been the unparished area of Worcester, it's been the City of Worcester, including St Peters and Warndon villages. They are not separate from Worcester, they are Worcester. So here's the but. I see the usefulness and need for a town council in Worcester, but it should be for all of Worcester, including St Peters and Warndon villages. Now, I know the consultation feedback shows a very heavy preference for retaining the parish council for the respondents in those areas, with the second preference being a town council for the rest of Worcester. However, I know that St Peters Parish Council, which represents 5% of the population of Worcester, explicitly told their residents that voting for a citywide parish council would result in the loss of their parish council. I disagree with that representation because it would surely be different, but it is not a loss. And there is a cost to a fragmented situation across Worcester. We risk different areas being played off against each other when dealing with the unitary authority. It risks a them and us situation for residents. Now, the report, as we've already heard discussed, we'll be looking at a precept for a Band D property of between £60 and £100 for the new town council. So residents in the unparished area, including my ward of St Stephen, would rightly be asking what value do they get paying between 2 and 5 times the precept of Warndon Villages and St Peters. Surely residents in those areas get a much better deal. They pay only £20 to £30 per Band D property, and yet again, they are benefiting from being in Worcester and the things that the rest of the city are paying for. It also seems wrong to me that the areas in Worcester with the highest deprivation are going to be asked to pay considerably more than the suburban, less deprived parishes. Now, all that said, I don't think it would be right that we should change the recommendation and go for a whole of city town council. We have done the best we can on the consultation in the short time available, but if there isn't clear support for a whole of city town council, I personally am going to vote against going any further, because I know there is a case to move forward with the unparished area. However, I don't support that for 4 reasons. The government is talking about area committees, neighbourhood boards, etc., and we don't know yet what those look like, but they could deliver the desired local voices needed. The voice of young people has been almost entirely absent from this consultation. 75% of respondents are older than me, and I'm not a spring chicken. Just 1.3% were in the 18 to 24 bracket, and it feels very wrong to me to be changing things without input from people who were living under the arrangements for the longest. 2 points. The option there is to change our mind later. And finally, the other benefit of waiting is we look at what is beyond Worcester today and bring in the urban extensions to an enlarged Worcester. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mace. Councillor Rudge.
Thank you, Mayor. Several disparate points, so I'll try and be as brief as I can with each one. It's just that it's such a huge topic and there are so many different elements to it, it's hard to kind of sum it up in one simple sentence. But the philosopher Simone Weil was brilliant in that she said small is beautiful, and I think she had a very valid point. It doesn't necessarily mean better if you get bigger. Sometimes it just means clumsy and inefficient. We had the privilege, some of us, of going to Northampton and talking to the town council in the city of Northampton, and they explained that the county council was 140 million in debt, and they were forced to go into a unitary, which is worse than our situation. And what saddened me was that who got elected, but the same people who'd got them into debt in the first place. So it just shows how crazy politics is at times, and it didn't necessarily improve things. Later elections, there were changes, but the point is that they didn't get things done in time, and it was a horrible mess for the Northampton Town Council to be fighting the Unitary Council, which is what they were. Even as petty as, they've nicked our tables, they've nicked our chairs, we have nothing to sit on, we don't know where we're going, we don't know who the building belongs to, we have to rent it. My point is, Mayor, really that if we don't get it done in time, it will be messy. And really what I'm trying to say is that we've given ourselves time. I know it's rushed, we've given ourselves time to get it right. And I think the working group has done a great job in trying to collate all of these different ideas, because it is complex. Second point is that I'm fascinated by the support from the parish councils. And I know there are reservations about it, and you know, Councillor Mace's point of were they pointed in a particular direction. I don't know about St Peter's and Warner Villages. We didn't consult everyone, but we did make an effort. And the response was really high. I think it was 68%, wasn't it, from the parish councils, people living in the existing ones. And it shows a degree of support for and appreciation of the way the parish councils run. And they're really very, very simple. And I have to say to my colleagues, much as I love you, the reason it works so well is because it's basically apolitical. And that is a fantastic model that we could adopt in many, many ways. I know you're going to say it's impractical or whatever, but who cares? I'll say it anyway. The apolitical nature of the parish councils means that it attracts people who want to put something back. And they do it in spades. They are phenomenally good people, loyal people. They don't get paid for it. There's no allowance. They don't really care about that. And it's a range of incredibly professional, competent people who have tremendous experience in finance and HR, one of them, a whole range of things, unions, and they work together to solve problems. And my frustration, I'm going to say it now, Mayor, because I always want to say this, my frustration with this city council since I've been elected, we don't always concentrate on the problems. We sometimes concentrate on fighting each other or being petty or creating problems or being silly. And sometimes we miss the point because we don't work together very well. And the reason I don't think we have had such a strong endorsement in the city as we have in the parishes is because they don't see that unity. They see infighting and all sorts of silliness, whatever. But they don't necessarily unity of city councillors who they feel are representing them, rather than somehow getting diluted by being obsessed with their own political careers. And I think there's a tremendous amount to be learnt from the parish councils, and I hope we'll keep them. It doesn't mean that in future they may decide, look, the town parish council of Worcester is so good, we want to join. They may decide that in the future. Who knows? But at this stage, it's probably best to leave as they are, because they're doing a pretty good job, and they can decide that at some point in the future. Why does it work well? Well, one of the reasons is because the parish councils work so well with the city council. We're not in conflict. We know what's going on. We can report concerns from residents fairly quickly. The responses are normally very quick. There's a very healthy relationship between the parish council, the way it operates, and the city council. And there's no reason why that shouldn't happen in the future. Now, I know one or two people said, well, but John, you don't have elections. And I object to the fact that there are no elections. But to be honest, I don't think it really matters. I don't know that the quality of councillors on the parish council, when there are no elections, are necessarily any different from the quality of councillors on our town council. Bless you all. You're all professional, wonderful, skilled people. But the parish council is no less wonderful or skilled. So I'm not sure the elections really matter that much. I would advocate for option one. I think there's a great deal to be learned from parish council, and I hope that we will discover that we can do the same as a Worcester city, town, parish council, whatever you want to call it, and be as effective as the current parish councils. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rudge. Councillor Amos.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Actually, I find this report rather disappointing because it has come basically out as the predicted solution. In essence, it's claiming absurdly that the people of Worcester want another layer of bureaucracy and a higher council tax to pay for it. Arrant nonsense. And let's remember, all this has come about because the Labour government wanted to streamline local government by getting rid of one layer in two-tier authorities. Instead, and in fact, what we're going to get and end up with is one unitary, either the whole county or the southern half, plus a huge impersonal strategic authority consisting of Worcestershire and Herefordshire and either Warwickshire or Gloucestershire, plus now this proposed layer of government of either Worcester Town Council or Worcester Parish Council. Nearly 70% of the respondents live in one of the city's two parishes anyway. That means that only 29% of respondents live in an unparished area, i.e. people who will be affected by the imposition of a new layer of bureaucracy. And only 29% of those have responded. Then, Mayor, there are the misleading statements. For example, question 8 says, would you be willing to pay a parish precept as part of your council tax to fund a town/parish council? A number of people have raised this with me, Mayor, asked me to explain what that means. And they've raised it with me because they understood this to mean that part of the council tax would be taken from the council and instead given to the parish town council, when in fact the question means an increase in council tax. So this question, Mayor, should have read, in addition to, not as part of your council tax. It's misleading. So people will be paying more council tax, but not getting any more services. In the totality, they're not going to get any more services, but they're going to end up paying more council tax. Same level of services at best. But Mayor, the people of Worcester are not gullible. The largest group, 46% or nearly half, of respondents who do not live already in an area that is parished, said they were not willing to pay a parish precept. 46% who don't live in a parished area are not prepared to pay to live in a parished area, in other words. That's a large number, because that is the largest group. And then we can look at paragraph 6.8. I'll just read it very briefly. The working group acknowledged that, regardless of which option might be agreed, initially there will only be a minimal service offer. I'd like to know what that means, a minimal service offer. But a new town parish council would be able to later decide to take on more services or assets through discussion and negotiation with the new unitary authority. Well, this is remarkable stuff. So what exactly is this minimal service offer? We haven't been told, but apparently we've been consulting people on it. Then apparently there are going to be discussions and negotiations with the new unitary authority that's been set up to get more powers, to take more powers from them, even though this sort of new authority has just been set up. So the new authority, having just been formed, is, as one of its first acts, going to just give away many of its own powers and responsibilities to Worcester Parish or Worcester Town Council. Why on earth is it going to do that? In reality, this is farcical realms of fantasy nonsense. There's actually no substance to this whatsoever. Then, of course, Mayor, we have paragraph 7.3, when it says, extraordinary wording this, parish councils are the only tier of local government dedicated exclusively to a defined local community. I mean, frankly, this is nonsense. Every single city and county councillor at the moment represents a defined local community. I represent Lower Wick, a very distinct and delightful local community, proud of it as it is. And so my other concern is about who has responded.
1 minute, Councillor Amos.
Sorry?
1 minute.
Okay, that'll do. Only 0.8% sent in a paper copy rather than online. So this bias certainly will have distorted and undermined the result. As whole rafts of residents, I suspect, have been excluded, and of course overall less than 1% of the population of the city have engaged anyway. So, in conclusion, as you all vote to go on to stage 2 with this, make it clear that it will mean another 17 councillors and a precept of an extra £100 a year for Band D property. You don't know what powers and responsibilities you will have, but you do know they're going to cost you at least £100 a year. So from next May, residents will have 3 lots of councillors: the current county councillors, the new unitary councillors, and now town and parish councillors, with allowances, no doubt, that you'll engineer. So if you all want another layer of paid politicians, if you want to pay even more council tax for more bureaucracy but no more services, then please go ahead and vote for this, which is what I'm sure you're going to do.
Thank you, Councillor Amos. I have Councillor Stephen, then Councillor Cookson. Have I missed anyone? No? Fabulous. Then Councillor Stephen, please.
Thank you. I'm going to be arguing for option 1. And I've been on a bit of a journey myself. When I first sort of got thinking about this, probably 6 months ago, I sort of thought, well, in an ideal world, we should go for 1 parish council, 1 town council for the whole of the city. But we don't live in an ideal world. We do have these existing parish councils in existence. So why have I changed my mind? I think one of the things I think is quite important and quite interesting in the debate tonight, not everyone, but some of the people who are not arguing for option 1, maybe it is because they don't actually live or represent an area with a parish council. I think what we know, we will actually understand, and then what we understand, we will actually value. And anybody who has got a close association with the parish councils will actually value those parish councils. I don't represent St Peter's on a city council, but I do as a county councillor. And I've knocked on hundreds of doors over the last probably 6 months and spoken to many, many residents. I've also been working, I think, quite closely with the local parish council, learning what they do. And I've found that by talking to those residents, many, many of them have told me that they really value the parish council, they value what they do. And not one of them on the doorstep has told me that they don't value the parish council. I think it's really important that a really important principle is that we should make decisions at the lowest possible level, and that does mean parish councils. We're going to have a massive unitary authority, which is going to be very remote, and we do need a parish council that is actually working for local people. I know from working closely with St Peter's Parish Council the work they do. They work to hold other areas to account. They work closely with the police, they work closely with their county councillor, they work closely with the city council. They represent their local community. They do things like litter picks, they do things like cleaning up graffiti. They effectively stand up for their local residents. And in St Peter's, they have done things like they've created a new parish hall, and they've got a fantastic summer festival which attracts hundreds, if not thousands of people. I'm going to ask you now to please don't take away what they already have. It's very valuable to those residents, and I'd ask you to not take that away and to actually vote for option 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen. Councillor Cookson.
Well, I could wax lyrical about the role of a parish council, as people know, but actually I'm going to ditch what I was going to say and actually respond to some of the concerns that have been expressed. I do think we have a consensus, but I think it's important to express, to sort of target some of these. We're told a parish or a town council is just another layer of bureaucracy. I don't believe that. It is an additional democratic layer, but it's not unnecessary bureaucracy. It's a dedicated body focused solely on Worcester, accountable only to Worcester residents and able to champion our interests. We're told it's an unnecessary cost. The consultation showed that 59% of residents were willing to pay the precept. How often do people actually say they want to pay for something? Residents understand that local democracy and local services have a cost, and they believe they are worth it. Interestingly, Reform put up their precept by 9%. I'm not convinced that actually that's got that level of consensus. We're told that the public don't want this. Well, we all admit on the working group that the consultation was limited. That's why if you look at 11.1, it actually says we're looking at doing a mail shot to every house. So we pick up those deprived areas. We pick up the people who aren't on social media. We make sure that people have their voice and we get that representative views. So, but interestingly, from those that did respond, the public very much do want this. 76% supported having a town or parish council, including a majority in the unparished area. And 62% did not believe that the unitary council alone would meet Worcester's needs. It will be interesting when we get to the next consultation to see what those figures are. It says that we've been accused that this is driven by councillors, not residents. I really think we have to look at the power of the working group that's done this. We had people coming from all different areas with different views, and actually I think we've come to a consensus. Every local authority that we spoke to that has a council had very much the same views and the same way of saying what they thought was important. We've said that concerns about actually having 3 is going to divide the city, but actually I think what the working group has demonstrated is that it's brought us together. We've been able to collaborate, and one of the things that we've been talking in the working group about is about that collaboration existing as we go forward. There's nothing to stop us cooperating. And as I think Councillor Roach said, well, there's nothing to stop them joining us at a later date. If the new City of Worcester Council is as successful as we hope it would be, as successful as some of the areas that we went to visit, Weston is the one that I was so impressed with, but I know I wasn't involved in the one at Shrewsbury, but I know people were, and equally they were very impressed with that. Councillor Orcott went over to Kidderminster and she was very impressed. If we can make the City of Worcester so impressive, we'll have those other councils knocking our door saying we'll want to be part of this. And actually their councillor said, yeah, fine, we'll wait to see the proofs in the pudding, and I think that's fine. Somebody mentioned there's unlikely to be elections. That happens at normal parish councils where there's a very small geographic area. Every town or city council that we visited, that we consulted, there are competitive elections. There is a real drive of people wanting to do this. It is a really important piece of work. I assume that Councillor Amos won't be planning to stand for any new parish council, given his views on it. And finally, I think it's really worth pointing out, much as we might want to, this is not about recreating Worcester City Council. This is about creating a completely different body with different duties and responsibilities. It will be focusing on the issues that are those ones that are very dear to people's hearts. It can do statutory services, but only if it's commissioned to by a local by the other authority. That happens. It might be something that happens in Worcester over the long term, but I think that's a long-term aspiration. What we need now is to have a council that's set up there. We do not want to be in the position of Durham and Kidderminster, who have had to fight and fight and fight to get those councils. This is our opportunity to do it, and to do it now. I passionately believe this. I think there's a consensus at the room, and thank you. I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Councillor Cookson. We have Councillor Cochrane.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be very brief. I'm just looking at this really, really practically. How can we possibly have a situation where Worcester City has no parish as being the only area in the whole of the new unitary authority that doesn't? That makes no sense. So there must be one. Secondly, I think it's clear that there's certainly not yet been an expressed appetite to dissolve the current parish councils, so they can't be. So option one is the preferred option. It's the practical option. As already mentioned, that doesn't preclude them in the future from joining if that looks like it would make practical sense. And I'm sure that a future Worcester Parish Town Council would welcome with open arms. That's just how I see it.
Thank you, Councillor Cochrane. Do we have any other speakers? No? I'm going to add a few points then, if I may. Thank you for all engaging in this debate tonight. I'm really glad to see that we've had a really healthy debate about this and we've all spoken about it for quite some time this evening. I say that because this is really important. It really matters when we get to stage 2 of this process that we get it absolutely right and we have the people of Worcester alongside us. I say that specifically because we did have a consultation on this first stage, absolutely, but we really didn't reach very many people. And we reached less than 1% of Worcester with our consultation. And I am concerned about that. So I would urge you to take this very seriously, go into this with an open mind, into the next stage, and really make sure that we try and get a thorough consultation at the next stage. You are all community leaders. You are all important within your own wards and realms. And it would be lovely to see you all engage with this and try and get this out there as much as possible. We will now go to Councillor Lawrenson, if you'd like to sum up.
Hello, can you hear me? Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions. Thank you, Mayor, for framing the debate. I really appreciate that and the discussions beforehand to enable us to do this. Reiterate my thanks to all the officers and the members of the working group. There's a huge amount of effort that's gone into this. It really has. I mean, it's been effectively a part-time job for me anyway. I'm going off script already. It's just taken a huge amount of effort to get to this point. I'm not after sympathy or praise, I'm just making the point. I'm going to really have to zip through. We're all hot and bothered, and there's probably a break after this item, so I'll be as quick as I can. I do want to try and capture as many of the points, well, they've already been made, but I want to acknowledge as many as possible, because I don't want to feel that you've spoken and then you've been ignored, not at all. So Councillor Lamb, who I've worked very closely with in the working group, summed up the range of services that other town councils provide. Without a new council, Worcester would risk losing traditions that make this city special. Councillor Scott talked about how a new council would be responsible for public realm and events. I mean, if we didn't have a council looking after the city centre, for example, we'd soon notice the difference. Councillor Agar also reinforced the importance of events, particularly in relation to the armed forces. Again, these events don't happen by magic. People have to make the effort to put them on. That's where the new council would come in. I totally agree with Councillor Lewing about it being challenging to convey the meaning of parish councils to the general public. I'm by no means an expert on what parish councils do. I don't live in a parished area. So I do think there's a big challenge for stage 2 to educate the public, absolutely. Councillor Kimberley reiterated the number of stage 1 consultations. It is a tiny percentage of the electorate. There's no getting away from that. We do need to listen to as many views as possible from across the city. And again, this is stage 1. There is stage 2 coming if we vote for that. Now, there is clear support for existing parish councils to exist. I appreciate that, and Councillor Jagger made that point. Councillor Denham even made the point that she's spoken with a member of another council who's looking at what we're doing and thinking that's really helpful because we're in a similar situation. I think that's a massive compliment to officers in particular for the amount of work that they've done and the quality of work that they've done. And thank you, Councillor Denham, for emphasising that I meant £60 to £100 for a Band D. I apologise for not making that clear in my opening statement. That is an estimate, £60 to £100 precept for Band D. I'm halfway through, believe it or not. Councillor Mace said he had concerns about setting that precept, but became convinced that a local voice is needed. I take on board his point about discrepancies between precepts, deprived areas paying more than, more affluent areas, and only a few people took part in stage one. Again, that's a common theme. Councillor Rudge referred to lessons learnt from Nottingham. Honestly, if you'd been on one visit to another council, you would probably have a very different view, or at least a more enhanced view on this process, because the visits were amazing. He did make a couple of points that I think I ought to emphasise my disagreement with. He said that people are attracted to parish councils because they want to give back to their community. I think it's possible to be party political and want to give something back to your community. I think we're all here because we are in both of those camps. He mentioned the lack of elections at parish level and not being an issue. I think that's a slightly bizarre comment. We're here because we were voted in. Because people trust in us to do a good job on their behalf. So I don't think a lack of elections is a positive thing for parish councils. I get Councillor Amos's point about a level of council. We're talking about another level of government when the national government said it intended to streamline local government. I totally accept the apparent contradiction there. I totally get the point about 70% of respondents almost live in parished areas. So the results are skewed in their favour, you could argue. Concern about council tax, well, I think Councillor Cookson made the point excellently. Your concern is slightly undermined by the massive increase as a member of Worcestershire County Council to our own council tax. So you have to bear that in mind. Almost there. Councillor Stephen said that he initially thought that one town council is needed, but has changed his mind as a result of this process, and appreciates that people who live in parished areas are very appreciative of what their parish does for them. And my comments, my beliefs are very similar to his. It's important that we make decisions at a local level. Coming back to Councillor Cookson, this is not about bureaucracy, this is about accountability, and that relates to what Councillor Stevens said. This is about making decisions at a local level. We could take on statutory services, but again, Councillor Cookson made another helpful point about that being as a result of negotiation with the new unitary authority. This is not a replication of Worcester City Council. That would be absurd. Why would you get rid of Worcester City Council, then just get Worcester City Council the exact replica? It's not that. We would have to have dialogue with the unitary authority to see what statutory services we might provide. But it is just a fact that the initial level of service would be minimal. And I appreciate there's ambiguity about what minimal means, but we're still in the consultation. And Councillor Cochrane said, if we don't proceed with this, Worcester would be the only unparished area in the new unitary authority area. So Worcester would be an anomaly. And he finished his comments by saying that we should respect the views of those who live in areas of the city that are parished. So apologies for the repetition. I've probably gone into too much detail in a typical ADHD manner, but I've done it now. I hope that's done the debate some justice. And I welcome the vote on the option that we've just been discussing. Thank you ever so much for your patience and a warm evening.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lawrenson. We are going to take the recommendations one by one, starting with point 1, which is that we note the progress made by the Community Governance Member Working Group in relation to the review. Point 2 is we... Oh, do I need to vote on that one? So can we have a vote on point 1? Do we note the progress? Yeah. Hang on, I need to note it as well. Okay. Any against? And any abstentions? No? Okay. Point 2 is we consider the outcome of the stage 1 consultation on future governance arrangements for Worcester and the findings of the Community Governance Review Working Group. Can we have a vote on that? All 4. Any against? And any abstentions? Fabulous. Right. So point 3. Okay, yeah. So point 3 is that we agree the preferred option for the publication being option 1. So all those in favour of option 1. So can we have hands for option 1? Any against? Sorry, can we have 4 again in favour? Then right up. Nice and high. I know it's warm. Okay. Any against? Any abstentions? And one abstention. Okay. So that's carried. So we will move forward with option 1 as our preferred option. So now. You're happy to carry on? Okay. So now we continue to point 4, which we agree the proposed arrangement for the second stage of the consultation scheduled to commence in August 2026. So can we see all votes for? Okay. Any against? And any abstentions? One over there. One abstention. Thank you. That is carried. Okay, break. We've now concluded that item. We're going to have a short break. Before you disappear, it's going to be 10 minutes, right? We're going to have a break for 10 minutes. Please do get up, have a walk around, get some water, get some air if you need it. But please be back here in 10 minutes because I am eager that we finish early, as early as possible this evening so that we can get out of this warm room, okay? So 10 minutes. Okay, thank you, folks. Thank you for coming back in the heat and coming back promptly. We will move on to the next item in the agenda, which is item 9, which is the special responsibility allowance. And I'm just seeing who I'm passing on to for this one.
Proposed by Councillor Denham.
Okay, so I'm going to, is there a proposer for this one? Councillor Denham.
Thank you very much. I hope that colleagues have read the report before us, which is fairly brief. The Audit and Governance Committee used to be a fairly minor committee of the council, with few meetings and a kind of fairly technical
And could you
agenda.
speak into the mic a bit more? Thank you.
The Audit and Governance Committee used to be regarded as a minor committee of this council, with few meetings and a rather technical agenda. It wasn't regarded as particularly important by previous administrations, and that is what's reflected in the lack of responsibility allowance for the Vice Chair. The committee is now has a proper scrutiny role within our governance and our constitution. I think it's somewhat symbolic, whether it's purely accident, that actually the Audit and Governance Committee has filled the agenda for tonight's full council meeting. They now undertake systematic examination of risks for this council and are part of a more robust assurance process. And this work should be appropriately valued and remunerated. There's been an increase in kind of activity since 2025, with the responsibility for political oversight, as I mentioned, of the management of corporate risks and for monitoring the council's treasury management activity. Those are functions that used to previously be within the Policy and Resources Committee, but I think now sit in a much better place. So I recommend to Council that we approve a special responsibility allowance for the Vice Chair role of the Audit and Governance Committee, and that we agree to include retrospectively this allowance for the role of the Audit and Governance Vice Chair within the scheme of members' allowances from the 1st of April 2026. And I should also say this is fully accounted for within our budget, and as such is a relatively minor amount of money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Denham. Would you be happy to cover the supplementary report as well? We'll do these two together.
Absolutely. So the supplementary is about adjusting the special responsibility allowance for the Chair of Audit and Governance, whilst identifying the fact that there was no allowance for the Vice Chair. It uncovered the anomaly between the Chair of Audit and Governance and the chairs of the other regulatory committees of this council. So the proposal is to equalise the position with the Chair of Planning and the Chair of Licensing and Environmental Health. So those recommendations simply about adjusting the special responsibility allowance for the Chair and it being retrospectively applied to from the 1st of April.
Thank you, Councillor Denham. Do we have a seconder for this item? Yes, Councillor Mace.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have one small correction, I think, to what Councillor Denham just said, is that we're equalising the Chair with the Chair of Licensing. Planning gets slightly more So it's actually a 1 times the basic allowance, so we're equalising it with licensing. I'm very happy to support the SRA for the Vice Chair and the increase for the Chair, I think, because we do do a lot of good work in audit and governance, especially with the backlog in the local government audits. The adds extra responsibility on audit and governance to make sure that we are filling our bucket of assurance that we are in a good position. And I know Councillor Desira has been on the audit training from the LGA as well, and that talked about a lot of the things that we are now doing, like doing deep dives into our risks. And when I went on that training, discussing with councillors from other places that they also in their audit and governance would be managing the risk factors for the council, which we are now doing. It was actually relatively unusual for us to be paying the chair of audit and governance less than other regulatory committees, because that's an indication that a council considers it less important, when actually it's one of the most important roles to make sure that we are safe and doing everything we should be. But considering the extra work we've done, our last audit and governance meeting, I think, was 3.5 hours. It covers the amount of work that's going in there, so I'm very happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. We will go to speakers. We have Councillor Holmes first.
Thank you, Mayor. Through my work, I became an engineer, and through improving my work, I became an auditor. And I am a technical auditor at work, and it is through becoming an auditor that you learn the processes, you get to look deeply at what you're doing, and you reflect and you cross-examine and you think. And auditing is one of the benchmarks of a good processing system and a good governance system, and you hold yourself to account, you cross-examine yourself, and you look at all your processes, and it is very much a healthy organisation that ticks along normally without drama if you have a good, strong auditing system. And I feel that this city does, and it answers its own questions. I know it was having problems when I started on ordinance governance with the accounts not being checked, but that was outside of our brief, and I'm very pleased that it's still being chased through, and I have been asking that is still being done. So I think it's high time it is matched and it is recognised.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Mayor. I suppose you could think that this is a rather minor issue to have been brought to a full council meeting. But the fact that it has come to full council, because it has to, does indicate that it isn't a small issue to be brushed away and shouldn't be brushed away. So I have 3 questions about it, really. It'd be nice to get some answers as well, by the way, on this, but I've got 3 questions. The first one is, why wasn't this dealt with at the proper time when we considered the annual IRP recommendation at budget time? Second question, what has changed so dramatically in the few months since then that it has now become urgent and brought to full council? And third, we have never before, to my knowledge, and I'll be happy to be corrected, agreed any retrospective recommendations on anything to do with members' allowances. So why are we doing it today? I completely agree that Audit and Governance Committee is a very important committee, and in my view, it always has been because of its basic function. It's always been important, and that hasn't changed. So that can't be the issue. I chaired it for 6 years and worked very well with Councillor Lawrenson, if he doesn't mind my saying that politically. And one change that we introduced was to put more emphasis on the governance side of its work. And I didn't expect, frankly, Mayor, nor would I have ever asked for an increased allowance just because the workload and responsibilities had increased. That's part of the job. But there is another concerning aspect to all this, in all honesty. The point is that members are paid allowances, not a salary. This matter here reads that because the Audit and Governance Committee has taken on one additional role on a temporary basis, that there should be a salary increase as a result. But that is not how allowances work, and it's not how they're supposed to work. After all, we all get the same basic allowance, but some councils are more diligent and hardworking than others. So we cannot and should not start paying members on the basis of doing overtime. And therefore, to conclude, Mayor, this council agreed the IRP's recommendations for members' allowances for 2026-2027 at the appropriate time this spring. I think it was unanimous. Historically, the IRP have not considered an SRA for Vice Chairman of Audit and Governance Committee. If we now wanted to do so, we should put that forward and consider the outcome in the IRP's next report for members' allowances for 2027-28. We've already had a lot of what I call allowance creep recently, with now virtually every Vice Chairman getting an allowance. That's a decision for the Council to take, of course. But these Vice Chairmen never used to get allowances. So those cases waited to be assessed. They were no more urgent then than the Vice Chairman's position of audit and governance is now. And it is, of course, an extra £4,500 of public money. But I must say this evening, money doesn't seem to be a problem. But when I want a new dog poo bin, for example, in Lower Wick, I'm told there's no money. There's always money for these things. And I don't think the public like it. So if you want to do this, I would say to Council, if you want to do it, please do it in the proper way and do it at the right time. But now it's not the right time and it's not the proper way.
Thank you, Councillor Amos. Councillor Kimberley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am glad that the topic of propriety has sort of come up in this conversation. I believe it is right that the Chair and the Vice Chair of Audit and Governance should be compensated in accordance with their level of responsibilities. I note that in some other authorities within this Council, the function of scrutiny has been reduced to what might be termed as a little bit of a quid pro quo, not quite a 5 million quid pro quo, but certainly an amount of money to induce one minority party to assist another minority party into a position of leadership. Whether I am speaking of a county or a borough level authority, I shall leave to colleagues to divine. I am simply glad that here in Worcester City, such games are not played. Scrutiny is a vital task for local government as it keeps us honest, it keeps us legal, and it keeps any leadership on its toes. That is what it's for, and it is hard, important work. As a Labour councillor, it is a core belief of mine that worthwhile work should be compensated accordingly, and for that reason, I am pleased to speak in favour of these two proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers on this item? No? Then does Councillor Denham wish to sum up and respond to some of those points?
Thank you very much, and thank you for those contributions. I can understand why those who've maybe held these roles in the past feel aggrieved that they're not able to benefit from the decision-making today. It is a rare example of potentially a bureaucratic slip that it wasn't noticed when we debated and agreed the special responsibility allowances earlier in the year. The workload and the frequency of the meetings have undoubtedly increased and the responsibilities have increased, and it is absolutely part of our principles that chairs and vice chairs of committees receive an additional special responsibility allowance because they have special responsibilities on behalf of this council. So I move the recommendations for both the Vice Chair and Chair of Audit and Governance to have amended special responsibility allowances as set out in the reports.
Thank you. With that, we will move to a vote. So can I see all those in favour of this item? Any against? And any abstentions? No? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. So we will move on to item 10, is that right? That's where we're at? So item 10 is that the Council will now consider reports on other matters by which law in accordance with the Constitution are referred to the Council for decision, starting with 10.1, which is the report from the Audit and Governance Committee from the 16th of June 2026. the Treasury Management Annual Report. Do we have a proposer for 10.1? Councillor Lawrenson.
Thank you, Chair. So on 16th of June this year, the Audit and Governance Committee considered the Treasury Management Annual Report for 25-26 and referred it to full council this evening for information. The recommendation for tonight's meeting is to note the report. I'd suggest that if members have any questions about it, they direct them to the Corporate Director for Finance and Resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrenson. Do we have a seconder for this item? Yes, Councillor De Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased to recommend the Treasury Management Annual Report. Treasury management is one of those areas of the Council's work that rarely attracts attention when it works well, but it is fundamental to the Council's financial resilience. Careful management of borrowing, investments and cash flow ensures that public money is safeguarded and that resources are available to support the delivery of essential services. The Audit and Governance Committee has an important role in scrutinising Treasury management throughout the year, providing assurance that the Council is operating within the approved strategy and in accordance with professional guidance. I would like to thank officers for the quality of the reports presented to the committee and for the openness with which they respond to members' questions. Their expertise enables us to undertake effective scrutiny and gives confidence that these important responsibilities are being managed prudently. I am therefore pleased to second the recommendation.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers on this item? Yes, Councillor Gregson.
Thank you, Mayor. And at the risk of appearing pedantic again, I would be interested to hear the chair of the committee respond to a question rather than the director, especially given the last item on the agenda. And I'd like to know why the agenda item is numbered 10A, whereas on the agenda itself it is numbered 10.1. Thank you.
I think it's just a formatting issue, honestly. But no, I've just been looking for it in my own reports and found that it's 10A instead of 10.1, but I think it's just formatting. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Lawrenson.
Yeah, I'm grateful to for the question from Councillor Gregson because it gives me an opportunity to say how remiss I was in not thanking the finance team for a wonderful report. So I apologise for that, and I'd just like to say thank you for a highly detailed finance report. Councillor Gregson, I'm a quite renowned pedant in Worcester on account of being on the autism spectrum, but I think you're making me reconsider my title as pedant number 1. You've been given an answer to your question, I believe, and I'm going to be quiet now.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? No. Okay. This item is just for noting. There's no votes that is required. So we're going to move on to 10.2 or 10B, if you prefer. As long as you can find it, I don't mind. Which is the referral report from Audit and Governance Committee from the 16th of June, which is the annual report. Do we have a proposer for 10.2? Yes, Councillor Lawrenson.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, it's the Councillor Lawrenson show tonight, but it just shows the extent of the Audit and Governance Committee's work. So again, on the 16th of June, the Audit and Governance Committee noted the Annual Governance Annual Report 25-26 and referred it to this Council meeting for information. The recommendation for tonight's meeting is to receive the report, which you've all done. I'd like to thank all our officers involved in the Council's audit work and their excellent support of the Audit and Governance Committee. I'd also like to reiterate my thanks to our external auditors, ASETS. As stated in the report, the Audit and Governance Committee has achieved its objectives over the last year and has thereby made a positive contribution to the Council's overall governance and control environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrenson. Do we have a seconder for this one? Councillor De Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm equally pleased to second the recommendation to receive the Audit and Governance Committee's annual report for 25-26. As a member of this committee, I have seen the breadth and depth of its work over the past year. While much of the work is technical and takes place behind the scenes, it is essential in helping ensure the Council maintains high standards of governance, accountability and financial oversight. Our role is to provide independent challenge, seek assurance where it is needed, and support continuous improvement across the Council. The report reflects that work, covering areas such as internal and external audit, risk management, governance and financial control. I would like to highlight the value of the detailed discussions and deep dives that the committee has requested in specific areas of the risk register. These have been extremely helpful in enabling us to better understand the risks facing the Council and the effectiveness of the mitigations and controls put in place by our risk management officers. One area that has received particular attention is IT security. We recognise that risks in this area are not simply hypothetical or theoretical. The reality is that cyber threats are a continuing and evolving challenge, and it is important that we remain prepared and vigilant. As a committee, we have therefore placed particular focus on ensuring that appropriate assurance is obtained and that members and officers have the knowledge needed to support the Council's resilience. With that in mind, I would encourage any members who have not yet completed the IT security training periodically offered through our training provider to take the opportunity to do so as soon as possible. This training plays an important role in helping all of us understand the risks and practical steps we can take to protect the Council. I would like to thank our Chair for his leadership, for my fellow committee members for their thoughtful contributions, and for officers and auditors for the professionalism and expertise they bring to the committee. Their support enables us to fulfil our responsibilities effectively. I am pleased to second the recommendation and commend the report to Council.
Thank you, Councillor De Serra. Do any councillors wish to speak on this item? No? Okay. Then I will say that there is no vote required on this one, as it is just for noting. So we will move on to 10.3 or 10C, if you prefer, which is another report from the Audit and Governance Committee from the 16th of June, which is the amendments to the Constitution procedure for motions. So do we have a proposer for this one? Councillor Lawrenson.
Thank you, Chair. Another brief speech in support of this. So the recommendation is to adopt changes to Part 4 and Part 15 of this Council's Constitution, which relate to the procedure for amendments to motions to Council. These changes can be summarised as follows, and these are my own words. When a substantive amendment to a motion is proposed, an adjournment should be called to enable members to consider the meaning and effect of the amendment. So that would be change number 1 to the Constitution, if indeed we vote for it. Second one, I've summarised it as follows. Amendments to motions, especially substantive amendments, should be shared in advance of meetings to consider their meaning and effect even. The proposed changes to the Constitution would particularly support members like myself who are neurodivergent and or have processing challenges. I'd like to thank my colleagues who began the conversation about changing the Constitution to make this Council more inclusive. I'm really grateful for that. I was also remiss in the previous item that we talked about this evening, as I ought to have thanked my colleagues for their work on the committee throughout the year. Councillor De Serra has been particularly supportive and proactive, and it means a lot to me because it's made it a lot more manageable. I'd also like to thank officers for their reports on the proposed changes, and members of the Audit and Governance Committee for the contribution to the debate about the changes at the previous committee meeting last month. So, once again, a lot of work has gone into this, perhaps not as much as the local government review work, but it might seem like a minor administrative change or changes, but actually there's a huge amount of work, and I'm not claiming credit for that because these proposed changes were not my suggestion, there were others. So thanks again for making those suggestions to change the Constitution to make the Council more inclusive. We reached a compromise after a thorough debate at the previous Audit Committee meeting, and I hope you support the 2 changes to our Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrenson. Do we have a seconder on this item? Councillor De Serra.
Thank you, Mayor. The recommendation before us tonight is, they are not the same as the ones as originally brought to the previous full council. The original motion proposed that substantive amendments to motions should normally be submitted 3 working days before the meeting. Rather than determining the matter immediately, full council agreed to defer consideration and refer it to the Audit and Governance Committee for detailed review. In the spirit of cooperation and in recognition of the importance of constructive discussion, I shared the collective views of the Labour Group with the Chair of Audit and Governance Committee and the Monitoring Officer ahead of the committee meeting, at which this matter was considered. My intention was to ensure that our perspective and reasoning were understood in advance and there were no unexpected issues that might prevent a balanced and informed discussion. The committee subsequently considered the proposal in detail. During that discussion, members recognised the legitimate aim of supporting councillors who may need additional time to consider significant amendments, while also recognising the importance of preserving the ability of the council to respond to debate, public participation and issues that arise during the meeting. As a result of that discussion, the committee did not recommend introducing a mandatory 3 working day deadline for amendments. Instead, it developed an alternative recommendation that seeks to achieve the same objective through a different mechanism. The recommendation before the council is that where 2 or more members request additional time to consider a substantive amendment, the chair should adjourn the meeting for an appropriate period to enable members to consider that amendment before the debate continues. The recommendation therefore reflects the outcome of the committee's deliberations. It seeks to balance the objective of supporting members who require additional time with the need to preserve the flexibility and responsiveness that are central to effective democratic debate. In addition, further consideration has been given to the spirit of the original request through amendments to the Group Leaders Protocol. These amendments encourage substantive amendments to be shared with group leaders in advance of meetings wherever possible. This provides an opportunity for greater awareness and preparation ahead of debates, while recognising that there will remain circumstances where amendments need to be considered during the meeting itself. Taken together, these 2 steps demonstrate a willingness to support the intention behind the original request while preserving the political operation of the Council and its democratic responsibility to allow open debates, public engagement and the ability to respond to matters raised during proceedings. I therefore commend the committee's recommendation to Council and ask members to support the proposed amendments to the Constitution. They represent a balanced and proportionate approach that promotes inclusion while preserving the principle of open, responsive and effective democratic decision-making.
Thank you, Councillor Sarah. Are there any other speakers on this item? Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. I am one of those people that we talked about that need extra time because I'm dyslexic and have ADHD. I think it's important to note that not all members would feel confident enough to say they needed more time, and especially in situations that we found ourselves in the last few weeks where we've been asked to keep meetings to an absolute minimum of time. I think that puts real pressure on everyone else to keep meetings short, and I think that is really disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Jagger.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor. We had an extensive discussion on auditing and governance.
And just get quite close to your mic, sorry.
We had an extensive discussion on this issue on audit and governance and within group leaders and within our group as well about the importance of preserving democratic debate, the importance of preserving the flexibility of asking and making changes at the last minute for practical or political reasons, but also acknowledge that there are situations where more time might be necessary in line with what happens in schools where people getting extra time. It wouldn't be the same as having people having the questions far in advance. So we reached a compromise within the committee of making some allowances without stifling the debate, and I think that the proposal strikes that right balance between that democratic debate and making those adjustments that are reasonable without restraining freedom of expression in an excessive way. So I would urge members to support this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Jagger. Councillor Mace.
Thank you. I'm not going to relitigate the discussion we had at Audit and Governance Committee about this, but I'm glad to see these proposals coming forward because I think it helps us all and is more professional to be setting that expectation that where a substantive amendment has been created and is available before the meeting, that is shared between group leaders, because it did come up in the debate that it would seem reasonable for group leaders to be discussing amendments beforehand. And at least my experience is I've never had that happen in the entire time I've been a group leader. So I would hope that we're setting this expectation in the Constitution that we see that coming forward and we have better quality debates, because this is something I've raised in the Corporate Peer Challenge about how we can improve political groups working together. And that's my intention with this, is we will work better together by having these changes in there. So I hope we support them going through this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Mace. Councillor Riaz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be supporting this motion because it achieves what the original proposal failed to do, and I think it's really important for the general public to understand what the original proposal was and what it aimed in terms to do. I mean, when the issue first came before us, I opposed the original proposal because I believed it would have made a mockery of our democratic process. If amendments can only effectively be made before the meeting, then the real decisions would no longer be made in this chamber. They would be made behind closed doors, in private political meetings, long before the public ever saw the debate. That's not transparency, that is not openness, and I don't believe the public elect us to stage manage decisions that have already been settled elsewhere. The council chamber should be where minds can be changed. A public speaker should still be able to influence policy. A persuasive argument should still be able to shape an amendment, and democracy should happen in public, not in private. But I also recognise some members need more time to properly consider substantial amendments, and that is a legitimate concern, and this compromise addresses it sensibly. Instead of banning or discouraging amendments during debate, it allows an adjournment where substantive amendments can be introduced, giving everyone a fair opportunity to understand what they are being asked to vote on. This is a far better balance. It preserves openness, protects accessibility, and keeps democratic decision-making exactly where it belongs, in this chamber, in public, where the people can represent, that where we represent can see it. For those reasons, I'm pleased to support this.
Thank you to Councillor Riaz. Are there any other speakers on this one? Councillor Jagger, you've already spoken. Okay. Any other speakers? Okay. We will move to a vote then. So, all those in favour of this item? Any against? Any abstentions? No? Okay, so that's carried. We will move safely on to item 11, which you'll be pleased to know has no A, Bs or Cs or 1, 2s or 3s. Item 11 is the report from the Leader of the Council on which, I can't read anymore, I'm too warm. The report from the Leader of the Council on any matters which they are of the opinion require urgent consideration by the Council. I am not aware of any reports being made. Fabulous. Then we move on to point 11, which is any other business. There are no other items of business tonight. And point 13, which is any exempt issues. There are no exempt items to consider this evening. Before we close the meeting, I will remind you we will not be having refreshments in the Mayor's Parlour as usual. That is because it is extremely warm today. It has been extremely warm, and we're keen to let the staff and officers go home as soon as possible. So just keep that in mind. But thank you all, you've been fantastic, and I will now close the meeting.